In a mansion bathed in gold, silence whispered secrets untold. Behind closed doors, servants moved like quiet shadows of grace. Every room shimmered with wealth, yet one stayed unseen, untouched. It was the maid's small room. Plain walls, humble prayers, no light. The millionaire never cared to glance that way, not even once, until fate twisted paths one quiet morning without warning. Running late, coffee in hand, he opened the wrong door in haste. The hinges creaked, a sound too soft to carry its destiny. Inside, he saw the maid kneeling by the window, hands folded, her eyes closed, her lips trembling with whispered devotion. No gold, no jewels, only faith glowing through morning sun. He froze, unable to move, his heart suddenly heavy and still. In that tiny room he saw peace he never bought with millions. The air around her felt sacred, like heaven touched the floor. Every breath she took carried a prayer for someone else's joy. He stood there, lost between guilt, wonder, and something divine. That moment, unplanned, unwanted, began to change everything. A door opened by mistake became the door to his own heart. And the man who had everything found what truly mattered. Not wealth, not power, but a soul pure as morning light. The millionaire rushed through the mansion, keys in his hand. He had no idea one wrong step would open a buried truth. Every hallway looked the same, every door finely carved. He turned the knob carelessly, thinking it was his office door. But instead of luxury, he found silence wrapped in sunlight. The room smelled faintly of soap, candles, and humble prayers. A small bed, neatly made, stood beside a cracked window frame. On the floor, the maid knelt, eyes closed, hands trembling softly. Her lips moved with words he couldn't hear but could feel. He froze in the doorway, heart thudding louder than his breath. He wanted to step back, but something rooted him there. It wasn't guilt. It was awe deep and unexplainable. He'd seen her clean his home, not touch his soul. Yet now she seemed closer to heaven than he'd ever been. Her prayer floated like a melody between the walls. Light brushed her face, turning her tears into diamonds. He suddenly realized this was faith in its purest form. Not shouted in temples, but whispered in silence. A man with millions stood still before a woman with peace. He felt small, humbled, almost unworthy to witness it. The air shimmered with something divine and unseen. He quietly stepped back, closing the door like a secret. But what he saw behind would never leave his mind. Because sometimes God knocks through mistakes, and this time the millionaire had answered. He walked through his mansion. But it felt different now. Every painting, every chandelier looked meaningless. He couldn't forget the look on her face, calm yet powerful. All day her image haunted the edges of his thoughts. He had money but no peace. She had peace but no comfort. That truth burned through his pride like fire through paper. At lunch he sat before his golden plate but couldn't eat. He kept hearing her whispered prayer, soft but steady. What could she possibly be praying for in that small room? Maybe for a sick family. Maybe for someone she lost. Maybe even for him, the man who never noticed her pain. He looked at his reflection and saw emptiness behind his eyes. The walls of success suddenly felt like a lonely prison. He had built an empire but forgotten his own soul. One glimpse of faith had shaken his entire foundation. He leaned back, exhaling a heavy breath of confusion. For years he'd thought he owned the world, but now he realized he'd never even owned himself. That simple maid had something he'd been searching for, and the question burned deep. How? How could she smile so true? He decided then he needed to know her story, not as a boss, but as a man seeking light, because sometimes the rich learn from the humble, and humility begins where pride ends, just like his that morning. The next day, he waited until her chores were done. His heart beat faster than it should for a simple talk. She entered the study, wiping her hands nervously. "Maria," he said gently, "yesterday I opened your door." She froze, eyes wide, breath trembling like a candle flame. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." He raised his hand softly. "No, don't apologize. I saw you praying. I just wanted to understand." Her gaze lowered, I was praying for this house, sir, for your family, your safety, and your happiness. His throat tightened. And for yourself, he asked. She smiled faintly. If you all are blessed, I'll be fine. Those words broke the last wall inside his chest. He had hired her to clean rooms, not souls, yet her heart was purer than his $1,000,000 life. Why do you pray by the window? He asked again. Because light always finds me there, she replied softly. Her answer echoed like a sermon in his heart. He built walls of marble, but she built windows of faith. He nodded, unable to speak another word. For the first time in years, he felt seen by God through her. That night, he stared at the same window she prayed at. The moonlight fell the same way, gentle, forgiving. He whispered, unsure how, but he prayed too for her peace and his redemption. And the wind carried it like an answer. The following morning, curiosity pulled him back again. Maria's room was empty, but sunlight still blessed the space. He looked around carefully, his eyes soft with respect. On a small wooden table lay a single framed photograph. It was a boy smiling, holding a school notebook proudly. His shirt was torn, but his eyes shone with hope. The millionaire felt a lump rise in his throat. This must be her son, the reason she prayed every day. He picked up the frame gently, afraid to break the moment. Then he saw something else, a letter beneath it. He unfolded it and read her handwriting, neat but trembling. Lord, thank you for giving me work to feed my child. Thank you for keeping my employer safe from harm. His chest ached. Every line dripped with faith and gratitude. He realized she never asked for herself, only for others. And he who had everything never said thank you once. He placed the frame back carefully, his eyes glistening. The air felt heavy, sacred, like he was standing in a church. He whispered a silent prayer for the boy in the picture. May he never lose that light, he said softly. Then he turned and left, but his heart stayed behind. He knew what he had to do. Help without being seen, because some blessings are meant to be quiet, and his journey of redemption had just begun. That afternoon, he made a few secret phone calls. He found the school listed on her old envelope. Without a word, he cleared all her son's tuition debts. The principal promised to keep it anonymous. He smiled, the first true smile in months. That night, he saw Maria praying again by the window, but this time her prayer felt lighter, brighter somehow. She didn't know it yet, but her miracle was already moving. He stood by his own window, mirroring her posture. Hands together, head bowed, silent, speaking everything. For once, the millionaire and the maid prayed in unison. Different worlds, same heaven listening. He realized the gift wasn't what he gave her. It was what he gained, a heart that could finally feel again. Days later, he saw her receive a letter from her son. She ran to her room, tears streaming down her face. He watched quietly from afar, smiling with peace. She looked toward the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Lord." He whispered the same from his office upstairs. They never spoke about it, but both knew the truth. Faith had linked them in silence, stronger than words. He had opened her door by mistake, but she had opened his soul by grace. And from that day, every sunrise felt like forgiveness. The mansion buzzed softly that evening, calm yet alive within. Maria moved through rooms, unaware of the miracle behind her. The millionaire watched her, humbled, his heart no longer proud. He saw her kindness in every small act she performed quietly. Each plate she placed, each curtain she drew carried grace. He realized goodness didn't need grand gestures to shine bright. It lived in small hands, doing ordinary things with pure love. He'd once believed wealth defined value. Now he knew better. He thought of her son far away studying because of her hope, and he smiled knowing that now that hope had wings to fly. That night he gathered all his staff for dinner in the hall. It was the first time he invited them to eat beside him. Maria tried to refuse, Shelley stepping back with humility, but he pulled out a chair himself and said softly, "Sit." Every servant looked stunned, the master eating with them. But to him it wasn't charity, it was gratitude finally spoken. He raised his glass, eyes misty, heart full of emotion. "You all are not workers," he said. "You're the soul of this home." Maria's tears glistened like diamonds beneath the chandelier light. For the first time, the house felt human, alive with warmth. Laughter replaced silence. Prayer replaced pride's echo. And when she thanked him, he shook his head gently. "No, Maria," he whispered. "Thank you for teaching me life." Because faith had not just changed one heart, it had united many, and love had found its rightful place within those walls of gold. Weeks passed, but the memory of that morning never faded. Every sunrise, he found himself near the same window she prayed. He'd stand there silently, feeling the sun touch his face. Once a place of routine, now a sacred space of reflection. The same window where her whispered faith first reached him. He often saw her there again, kneeling in quiet devotion. But now he joined her from afar, silently mirroring her peace. No marble church could give him what this window gave. It showed him heaven not in sky, but in simple gratitude. He began starting each day with a moment of stillness. The staff noticed his gentleness, his softened tone of voice. He listened more, smiled more, and scolded no one again. Maria's presence had turned the mansion into a sanctuary. He sometimes left flowers on her window ledge anonymously. She never knew who placed them. She only smiled and prayed. He didn't need credit. He'd already been rewarded with peace. The sunlight that touched that glass felt like forgiveness. Forgiveness for years of blindness to others' pain. He realized true wealth was never stored in banks. It lived in hearts that could love without asking back. Every morning became holy, every breath a silent prayer. He had once seen only his reflection, now he saw grace. The same light that touched her had begun to touch him too, and that window became more than glass. It was rebirth, a portal between his old self and the man faith made new. Months later, the house filled with joyful whispers and smiles. Maria had received a letter. Her son was finally graduating. She showed it to him with tears shining brighter than gold. He smiled gently, already knowing he helped make it happen. "Your prayers worked," she said, eyes filled with gratitude. He nodded. "No, Maria, your prayers worked for both of us." He offered her time off to visit her son and attend the ceremony. Her hands shook as she accepted the ticket, overwhelmed by grace. When she left, the mansion felt strangely quiet, almost lonely. He realized how much her presence had changed his days. Each corner she touched seemed to echo her warmth. Still, he stood by the window that evening, missing her prayers already. Sunlight spilled through, soft and golden, like her faith returned. He whispered, "Thank you," and felt peace fill the silence. Weeks passed before she came back, her face glowing with joy. She brought photos of her son, standing proud in his new uniform. He congratulated him with a smile and a fatherly nod. Maria's eyes brimmed with tears as she held his hands tightly. "You changed our lives, sir," she said through trembling lips. He shook his head softly. "No, Maria, you changed mine first. That room, that window, that prayer, all still the same, but now both their hearts carried stories of miracles. They stood side by side watching the same sunrise, and the light between them felt like a blessing reborn. Because some prayers don't end, they just return home. True wealth isn't in gold, it lives in the peace of the heart. One humble prayer can awaken 1,000 sleeping souls. He opened her door by mistake, but found his truth inside. The smallest rooms often hold the biggest revelations. Faith needs no noise. It blooms quietly where love exists. He had riches in hand, but she had heaven in her soul. Her whispered words rebuilt what his money had destroyed. Sometimes God hides miracles in ordinary people's lives. A servant's prayer reached higher than a millionaire's pride. He learned that kindness is the highest form of success. The richest hearts are often wrapped in the poorest clothes. A single act of faith can rewrite years of empty living. Her gratitude became his salvation, her light, his guide. Even accidents can be divine when hearts are meant to change. He realized wealth fades, but goodness lives forever. The maid's window became a mirror for his lost humanity. When he gave love, peace returned, doubled and pure. Every prayer she spoke planted grace inside his soul. And in that quiet room, two worlds found one heaven, because sometimes the poorest prayer can make a rich man,